Welcome back. This week we're going in focus on the new federal and state tax laws and what you need to know about them. 2019 has seen numerous changes to both tax codes at both levels. On the federal side, the biggest changes include different rates within tax brackets, higher standard deductions, the removal of the personal exemption, and an increase in the child tax credit. At the state level, the personal income and corporate tax rates will drop, the standard deduction will increase, and the quote zero tax bracket is set to expand. Now, with so many changes on the books, it's not surprising that people are confused about how this affects their taxes. So we brought in a few experts to break it all down. First, joining us in the studio, we have Jim Tiller, a tax partner at the firm Thomas, Judy & Tucker. And from our Charlotte studios is Charlie Bowers of Insight Folios. I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. And I'm going to start with you, Jim. A lot of folks seem surprised as they've been going in to get their tax returns done this year.
Yeah, there's some surprises there with respect to the changes to the withholding tables for a lot of employees, where those were adjusted last February of 2018. So now they're seeing the effect of that. And the reason the IRS adjusted these withholding tables was to counteract or to mimic the tax law changes such that they would get some of their tax decreases sooner rather than later. But that's starting to play out a little bit now when they file their tax returns.
So the long and short of that is you've been getting more money all year, you just might not have realized it.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So Charlie, the standard deductible is higher this time. How are people going to be determining if they're going to be using that or itemizing?
You know, that's a great question, and as you get closer to retirement, it's something to think about even before the tax codes change, in that does it make more sense to itemize or standard deduction? Well, now they've doubled the standard deduction, but they have eliminated personal exemption. So the case is going to be, again, which is more beneficial to minimize my taxable income? And with the tax code changes, there are some items that you used to be able to deduct that are no longer deductible, like the interest paid on a home equity loan. So to get above the standard deduction is a case-by-case basis.
So for folks, when they go to visit their accountant, what are some of the questions that they're going to be asking as they're determining how your taxes move forward?
Right. The things that you'd want to focus on is taxes paid. Now there's a cap on those taxes paid of $10,000. So any state and local property taxes will be limited to $10,000. There was a reduction in the 7.5% now of your medical expenses potentially could be deductible for Schedule A. And then also charitable contributions, as Charlie mentioned, mortgage interest is still deductible, but there is a new limit that if you have a new mortgage, it has to be less than $750,000 of mortgage debt. So those are the kind of things that your accountant's going to ask about to determine whether or not you're over the standard deduction amount.
Okay, so Charlie, there's going to be some folks who are watching this that have already done their taxes. I guess the big question for them is, what do they need to do differently next year if they want to see more of a refund at the end of the year?
Well, one of the main questions is, you've done your taxes, you've seen the results, and you've said, wow, I can't possibly owe this much in tax. So you got to plan for next year, and one way to do that is to go ahead and adjust your withholdings so that you're going to have a little bit more taken out during the year, so when tax time comes next year, you're not going to say, oh my gosh, how am I going to come up with the money to pay for this?
Are there some specific questions that folks should be asking their accountant?
Questions they should be asking.
In order to have a more favorable refund, so that they're doing this right, quote unquote right.
Right. Well, you know, one of the strategies is to potentially bunch, deductions such that you'd pay property taxes in the same year, January and December, to get over the standard deduction amount. So I think asking strategies like that of does it make sense to do more charitable contributions in one particular year, in a year where you choose to try to get over those thresholds. So it really becomes important to kind of have a strategic conversation with your accountant.
Okay, so we talk a lot, Charlie, we talk a lot about the federal taxes, and that's what obviously gets the most attention. Are we seeing much change on the state level for folks? Are they having to pay more for that also this year?
I think typically you don't see or hear so much about state taxes because the federal is such a big deal, and that really is where you get the media focus. How can I reduce my federal tax levels? And one thing that I think about is taxes over your lifetime. And really, even before we had this tax cuts, taxes are relatively inexpensive right now. So maybe be proactive and think about paying some of your taxes now because deferring taxes deep into the future, we're not sure where those tax rates are going to be.
So we just have a couple of weeks until we hit this deadline here. If you haven't gotten your taxes done yet, what should you be thinking about right now?
Things to think about. I would say overall, tax rates are down. So, like Charlie says, this is a good year to pay tax potentially, but some last minute strategies that have been in place for a while are IRA contributions. You can make IRA contributions up to April 15th of the current year and still receive a deduction for 2018. And then health savings accounts. High deductible health insurance plans are more common, which then have HSA. And you can make an HSA contribution by April 15th also. So those are some last minute things where if you're looking to save taxes for 2018, you can still make those moves.
Okay. Some important things for everybody to keep in mind. I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. And I want to thank you for joining our conversation as we focus in on the big issues facing North Carolina. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of InFocus. Until then, have a great week.